What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm going to be talking about my top 15 tight ends, mostly focusing on the 4 to 10 group. If you disagree with any of my rankings, comment down below and let me know what you think. Let's hop right into it. So 1 through 3 are pretty obvious. I have Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and Darren Waller. I don't really want to spend a lot of time on these guys. I mean, Travis Kelce is just going to be obviously the number 1 tight end. He's the best tight end in the league. He's getting a little up there in age, but I'm not really concerned at all because he gets a ton of targets. He's a really good player. There's no concerns there, especially with Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. Number 2 is George Kittle. And this is where the debate kind of sparks or starts because George Kittle's been hurt the last couple years, but when he plays, he's amazing. He has a way higher upside than Darren Waller, but less of a floor because of the injury. So let's just move on to my number 4, which is Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews has been a great tight end the last 2 seasons. And that's actually surprising because of Lamar Jackson's lack of passing yards. Lamar Jackson's career high in passing yards is 3,100 yards. Last season, he only passed for 2,700. I believe that number has to go up. Baltimore can't run it back doing the same old thing. If they want Lamar to be the franchise quarterback that they expect him to be, you can't win a Super Bowl only throwing for 2,700 yards in a season. In the playoffs, their offense fizzles out. It happened the last 2 years. So I think Baltimore really does need to change it up. The fact that the Ravens don't have any other consistent receiving weapons, and the fact that Mark Andrews seems to be Lamar Jackson's go-to red zone target, makes me pretty confident in his fantasy outlook. I will admit, I think the upside is capped for Andrews in this offense, but I feel so safe that he will finish the year with 60 to 70 receptions for 800 plus yards and 8 plus touchdowns every year. And that kind of consistency you can't buy outside the top 3 guys. That's why I have Mark Andrews as my 4th tight end. Number 5 on my tight end rankings is TJ Hawkinson. Now, I hate making this an argument for liking a player, but really, who else is there to throw to in this Detroit offense? Rashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams, St. Brown, just not a lot of proven guys. And I believe Hawkinson is actually a good player talent-wise. Last season, Hawkinson was targeted 101 times, caught 67 passes for over 700 yards. I don't see any reason why Hawkinson can't be targeted 120 plus times in an offense where I don't believe there's a true wide receiver 1. And I think it's fair to assume that they're going to be playing from behind a ton in 2021. Really, the receivers returning from last year are very far and few in between. I mean, it's TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift. I'm not thrilled that Jared Goff's his quarterback, but let's not hate completely on Jared Goff. I mean, he's a decent quarterback. I do believe that Hawkinson has a way higher ceiling than other players like Mark Andrews, but I'm scared the floor is way lower in this Detroit offense. And for that reason, I have TJ Hawkinson 1 spot behind Mark Andrews. At number 6 on my list is Kyle Pitts. This is kind of the range where I'm just tired of drafting the same old Mike Gesicki's, Dallas Goedert's, Evan Ingram's. Guys who analysts put on their breakout sleeper list every year. These guys aren't going to work out, we just have to realize it. Atlanta lost 150 yearly targets from Julio Jones leaving, and didn't replace those targets with any really new wide receivers. So if Kyle Pitts can come in as a rookie and get 100 plus targets, how isn't he a solid fantasy player? The downfall is, what if Kyle Pitts, like most rookie tight ends, isn't ready to play day 1 and be a day 1 fantasy contributor? It happens with a lot of rookie tight ends. They don't come in right away and become the starter or play a ton of snaps. They get worked in. Kyle Pitts is one of the hardest players to evaluate. It's a hard evaluation to make because we haven't seen a generational talented tight end drafted in the top 5 of the NFL draft before. It just hasn't happened in fantasy football, really history. The last guy that I can think of was Eric Ebron, and that hasn't really worked out for fantasy very well at all. At 6 overall for my tight end spot, I'm going to take the potential breakout of just being a great NFL player, overtaking the same old 700-yard, 5-touchdown tight ends that will be coming up on this list shortly. After Kyle Pitts, we're in the tier of tight end where I just kind of don't care. You know, if I don't get one of those top 6 guys, then I'm probably just going to punt the position and grab someone late. I really don't see anybody after Kyle Pitts really making me intrigued for fantasy football. A lot of these guys are just meh. I really don't care. They're kind of all the same at this point. Number 7 on my list is Noah Fant. Here's a guy who I'm just kind of done waiting for. You know, this is probably his last chance, but that's not really that fair. The quarterback situation in the last 2 years has been terrible for Noah Fant. But I did just see Teddy Bridgewater, who's coming in as Denver's new quarterback, might be the starter, might not be. have 2 wide receivers over 1,000 yards last year in Carolina. Last year, Fant had nearly 100 targets in 14 games. One he didn't play, and one game, that was the weird COVID game where the wide receiver had to play quarterback because of COVID, and he didn't even get targeted in the game. And Fant had some very good games last year. I just worry the TD production will never come because of 2 meh quarterbacks for Denver. Honestly, I don't know which guy I'd rather have between Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. Probably Teddy Bridgewater for more consistency's sake, but maybe for the upside, Drew Lock. He's a gunslinger with a big arm and might be able to take the next leap. Not likely, but maybe. I like the player's talent in Noah Fant, but the situation is just really iffy in a Denver offense that, to me, doesn't seem like it has a ton of upside. Moving on to my number 8 tight end, Dallas Goedert. This rank is assuming that no Zach Ertz will be there, who I expect to be leaving Philly pretty soon. This rank is super simple to me, and I'll keep it short. I wasn't super impressed with Jalen Hurts as a thrower last season, and I worry there won't be enough passing or quality passing to make Goedert relevant on a consistent basis. But I also do hear the argument of who else is there. Jalen Reagor didn't really look like a wide receiver, first round pick that he was, or second round pick, and maybe Devonta Smith works out, maybe he doesn't, who knows. So Dallas Goedert really is the most familiar player coming back that was relevant last year. But once again, I don't think Jalen Hurts is that good of a quarterback. Sure, he can run, and he made some plays last year, but he wasn't all that impressive to me as a rookie, so I'm not holding out a ton of hope for Dallas Goedert this upcoming season. Number 9 on my list is Hunter Henry. Now, Hunter Henry is a really tricky guy to evaluate for fantasy football this year. The Patriots made Henry a super highly paid tight end in the NFL. Of course, the Hunter Henry news was overshadowed very quickly by Jonnu Smith signing right after him. And of course, Jonnu Smith joining the crew doesn't make the situation any better for Hunter Henry. But in New England's situation, I think the Patriots will run 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, mostly focusing on 2 tight ends. Personnel, a ton, with 2 great tight ends. I think Mac Jones will end up getting the gig after a few weeks of Cam Newton throwing fastballs straight into the dirt. But if Cam Newton does get the job, we've seen him make Greg Olsen in the past a really great tight end. Henry could potentially be a good pick this late. If they're going to run 2 tight ends and pound the rock and just throw to the tight ends and wide receivers short, maybe he gets enough work. If he gets over 100 targets like I've been saying all video, that's what you need in your tight end, 100 to 120 target range. If that happens, they're going to be relevant for fantasy. I'm not going to say they're going to be top 5 guys, but if your tight end can finish somewhere between 8 to 10, you had a solid tight end for the year. Hunter Henry is going late enough in drafts to where he's not costing you any real capital. So whether he works out or not, take him late, stash him. Maybe it works out for you, maybe it doesn't. And number 10 on my list is Robert Tonyan. Basically, I think this guy was a complete fluke last season. It's very rare you see a guy catch 88% of his targets while catching 11 touchdowns on 52 receptions. That means 21% of his receptions were touchdowns. He basically caught a touchdown every 10 receptions. That's ridiculously fluky. I will say, if Aaron Rodgers comes back to Green Bay and really trusts Tonyan, why can't he get more work? Maybe he is actually a good tight end, but was just limited last year for whatever reason. I may have him a little too low based on the upside, but from what I saw last year in the efficiency, I just don't see it happening again where he catches double-digit touchdowns. Unless his workload and his target share go way up from last year. And now I'm just going to talk about my 11 through 15 because none of these guys really intrigue me a ton for fantasy football. Number 11, Logan Thomas, just quickly. He had a pretty good year last year, but it wasn't as impressive as you remember. I mean, he really picked it up at the end and really helped you in your, playoff run for having a quality tight end. That was a lot with Alex Smith, who dumped it down a ton. I just don't believe that Ryan Fitzpatrick, will be, a consistent player because he never is. I don't know why people are so high on Ryan Fitzpatrick because he's an absolute madman and never finishes a season as a starter. So why do we have hope that this Washington offense is just going to be great? Number 12, I have Mike Gesicki, and this isn't so much a knock on him, but it's really a knock on Tua. I don't like Tua that much as a quarterback. I do a rookie scouting video on quarterbacks every year, and when I came out with mine about Tua, people hated it, but it's looking kind of true. I wasn't a big fan of his. I just didn't think the arm talent was super there. I thought he was an alright quarterback, but I didn't think he was going to be the de facto #1 overall pick like he was, and I just wasn't as, actually he wasn't, but I just wasn't as impressed. That was Joe Burrow. But Mike Gesicki, I think he's a solid guy, but I just can't do the 705 again and again and again like we're going to get probably this year. Number 13 is Evan Ingram, and I'm just tired of this guy. I mean, he just drops a million passes. Somehow he made the Pro Bowl last year. That made no sense. Daniel Jones, I don't think is a very good quarterback either. People are kind of holding out hope once again for him to break out this year. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the dude's just not very good, to be honest. I think he turns the ball over way too much. I don't think he has great accuracy. I just think he's a meh quarterback. Plus, Kenny Galladay's coming in, and they just have a lot of weapons there. Saquon Barkley's back. I just don't know if there's going to be enough with Evan Ingram to, get enough work. Number 14, Zach Ertz. This guy intrigues me just because 2 years ago, he had 88 catches for over 900 yards and 6 touchdowns, aka the tight end 3, I believe. That's really good. I don't think he'll be back in Philly, but if he comes to a system like the Colts with Carson Wentz and Frank Reich, like he had in Philadelphia, why can't he be good again unless he's just completely washed? Or what if he goes to a team like Buffalo, a team where Josh Allen's really good, they don't have a solid number 2 weapon there? I don't know if I'm really buying into the Gabe Davis truthers this year or the Emmanuel Sanders signing. I like it for a real life NFL team, but not really for fantasy. And Dawson Knox just hasn't been anything for fantasy the last 2 years. In over 10 years of me playing fantasy football, I cannot name you really one fantasy relevant Buffalo tight end ever. So Zach Ertz would be welcome in Buffalo. And number 15 for me is Rob Gronkowski. This is basically just because he had a lot of touchdowns last year. Not really even that many. I think he had 6 or 7. But it's just Tom Brady. You never know when that connection can come back. Maybe he goes on a little run here. I don't know. Maybe Gronk. And really quickly, just some guys that I didn't rank, but had some, interest in when I was going through names. Maybe Tyler Higbee. We've been waiting on this guy forever, but no Gerald Everett. He left for Seattle. So maybe, Matt Stafford can unleash the tight end position for the Rams. And I had interest in Blake Jarwin. I know he's coming off, I believe, either a torn ACL or a torn Achilles, but, he had fantasy hype last year, and if everyone believes in Dak, which I'm not a total believer, I have him as my QB 8 right now, I believe, but if everyone believes in this Dallas offense being, completely elite and just fantasy receivers all over the place, I'm sure Blake Jarwin can get into the mix and be a pretty fantasy relevant receiver, or tight end rather. But alrighty, those are my 2021 tight end redraft ranks. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you liked the video, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for more fantasy content coming all summer long. Here are my tight end rankings, but I'll be coming out with my running back, wide receiver, and quarterback rankings in the coming week. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.